Okay, this is 2.2 Ecosystem Services. I'm wearing these dorky glasses because they block the blue light before sleep, and I'm doing this kind of late at night. So let's get straight to it. Make sure that you're following in the packet and trying to answer the questions and going along, and then you will use that to study. All right, so these are the values. This is the value of an ecosystem. And so the first one that we have is intrinsic value, which is ecosystems that have their own value independent from the needs and desires of humans. So there's a moral obligation to protect this ecosystem. And this often has to do with religion or philosophy. Intrinsic means it just has a value for no reason other than it is what it is. You can take a second and read this comic. Look at that devastation, son. There's almost nothing left of the natural world. I'm counting on you to squeeze the last scraps of profits out of it. So the following notes go under the type of ecosystem service in the boxes in the first column. Leave the other three columns empty for now. So, instrumental, it has worth in terms of goods and services. And number one is provisioning, which are goods that humans use directly. Lumber, food, crops, rubber, fur, medicinal plants. So these are all the things that ecosystems offer us, right? Yeah. And so the second one is regulating services. So we talked about this in the last unit, but the ecosystem regulates a lot of major systems, right? So like the carbon dioxide and the oxygen cycle. And 4 gigatons of carbon are removed from phytoplankton and plants, so primary producers. And then also nutrients and water cycles. So the ecosystem recycles nitrogen and water and cleans water. So it regulates all of these cycles in the globe. Then we have support systems. This says pest control. So pollination. Here you have the honeybee, right? Water filtration, which happens naturally in like a river and in a wetland. And natural pest control. So say you have a bug that or a disease that eats all of your crops. Well, if you have a healthy ecosystem, you might have another bug that eats the bug that's eating your crops. Then, of course, you have cultural services and aesthetic value. So it's beautiful. There's tourism, real estate, recreation. And in New Mexico, for example, that's like $1 billion industry, right? It's a huge part of our economy for people to come and enjoy the ecosystems and the beauty. And then now I want you to discuss and complete the 3 columns in the table. Some things can definitely show up more than once, but try to be more specific than saying pollution. There are countless correct answers. So it should follow in your notes. Supporting, provisioning, regulating, cultural, and these are all of the services and the important things that the ecosystem is providing. So you can pause this and fill in that table. And fill it out as we go, because we still have a few more. So resilience. This is the need to maintain genetic diversity so we can have varieties that address the needs of the future. So all of these have a role and they're all interconnected, right? And so we need these to survive. We need this resilience. And the more diverse an ecosystem is, the more resilient it is, right? The more stable it is over time. If we only have a few species, it's easy for them to get wiped off. So we need diversity in order to keep it resilient and stable. And this is the last slide. So this is just an interesting graphic, and it reminds us how important it is to be able to quantify what biodiversity does for us. Because otherwise, many people do not think of it as a tangible necessity to our health and lives. And I will leave you with that. Nowadays in our society, everything is about money, right? But how come, the Amazon rainforest isn't considered a valuable asset? How come there's no economic value to that? Well, think about that. Why don't we have value why don't we place more value on certain things like water and, plants, ecosystems? There's a theory in economics that everybody should, all the wealthy nations around the world should pay to conserve the Amazon rainforest because it's so important for the future of the entire globe. So the entire globe has an economic incentive to pay for the rainforest's conservation, right? And so that's what we need to move, is an economic movement to show that these things are really important, right? And so what you see here is these are the major environmental events and processes and how they endanger ecosystems and how ecosystem services are affected. So like food, freshwater, materials, those are the things that we need, right? That they provide us immediately. And then they also regulate the climate, they purify water, they make sure diseases don't happen. And then there's also spiritual, cultural, aesthetic. So as you know, as Native people, there's no value. You can't place value on the importance of the land, right? And these things are all affected, right? Food security, water security, economic security, personal and political security, energy security, and global environmental security. So if we lose the mangroves in a lot of coastal areas, we'll have worse future environmental disasters. If we lose agricultural land due to development, then we'll get less crop yields. Sea level rises and salt waters intrude the soil. The freshwater resources are affected. The loss of crops and famine and malnutrition. Epidemics and diseases cause public health risks. And the tourism affected, the job losses. So there's a lot of ways that we can show how important conservation is. And there's a lot of ways that it's under threat. So that's lecture 2.2. Thank you for tuning in.